Hello and welcome to my channel. Welcome back if this is not your first time, and if this is your first time, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and watch some of my other videos. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but I hope you do. On this episode of What the Doc, I'll be talking about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. I'll be talking about what I think worked for me, what didn't work for me, and my overall opinion on the topic as well as the documentary. What I think worked really well about this documentary is the fact that they tried really hard to not come off as being biased. We got interviews from all the different angles, including the first suspect, who Robert Murat, and as well as the parents, even though the interviews that were coming from Kate and Jerry McCann seems like they were from other interviews that they kind of just weaved into this documentary. A lot of the interviews shown of the McCann family seem like they came from other sources outside of the actual documentary that you're watching. So it gives you this feeling as if maybe the McCanns weren't 100% on board until later on in the series or in the multi-episode documentary. You finally get to feel like, okay, we see where you're going with this. We see that the family wouldn't necessarily have a problem with this documentary because it's not really painting them in a bad light, which is something that they've had to deal with. Another thing that I think worked really well in this documentary is how the documentary as a source of media is highlighting how the media in general really pushed the narrative of the possibilities of what happened to Madeleine McCann, and also what basically became the driving force behind spreading false allegations and theories in the case, or what we now know that are baseless accusations in regards to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And it got journalists to come in and argue about their point of why they act the way they act and where they were getting their information from, and the fact that we were able to see and hear the different investigators talk about why they made these theories up or why they suggested certain things, and then hear another detective come in and dispute all their claims. It really gives you the chance for you to make up your mind on how you really feel about this documentary as a whole. One of the main things that didn't work for me in this documentary was the same thing that I just said that worked for me, and it has to do with how they portray the media. We know that the media is willing to do just about anything to get our attention and keep our attention, and I felt like we got that after the first 5 minutes of this documentary talking about the media involvement in the Madeleine McCann case, and I felt like at some point it got so drawn out that it was just, come on now. It got a little bit repetitive over and over talking about the media, and I know that the media played a huge role in this case. So I think that even though their focus on the media was so interesting, it got a little bit repetitive later on, and that is one of the things that did not work for me. Another thing that didn't work for me, and I felt like it was a choice by the filmmakers to be a little bit more stylized. They were trying to drive as much drama as they possibly can from even the interview scenes, and it was a little bit overdone. Whenever we saw Robert Murat, knowing that he is a suspect in the case, whenever we saw him, he's like this menacing character. One half of his face is in the dark. There's so much shadows being casted on his face. And then later on in the documentary, we get a little bit more light on his face, so we could see him. Even when he's talking about the fact that the media try to paint him as this creepy pedophile and talk about his eye, and because he's blind in one eye, and the camera didn't even do a zoom or anything because he said that it's visible, but the thing is, there's so much shadow on his face, you can't visibly see that he's blind. Like, you're looking at him, you're like, okay, but we can't see the eye that he's talking about. We needed to see the eye in that case. They're just trying to make him seem more menacing at the time, and then later on when we find out that there was no evidence actually pointing towards him, and he was able to sue for defamation of character or libel or whatever the case was, whatever they call it in Europe. It's a whole bunch of different law terms that I don't know. I'm not a lawyer yet. When we find out that he was like officially cleared from all suspicions, he was illuminated. The light was on his face now, and we could see another person that they kept in the dark, or they kept very lowly lit, was the Portuguese investigator who came up with the theory that the McCanns actually overdosed Madeleine and she died, and they did something to dispose of her body. He was also given this menacing character throughout the whole thing. They were trying to say, hey, this dude is shady, look at him, he's in the shade, because he's literally shady. But I think that was a way for the filmmakers to sort of play with the audience and play with how we think about each of these people who are being interviewed. They're like, okay, this guy is clearly purely innocent, so there's not even a suspicion on him, so we're gonna put as much light on this person, and this person's a bit shady, so let me put him in the dark. That was what they were doing, and I clocked that right away. We've arrived at my opinion and how this documentary shaped my opinion. Before I watched this documentary, I went in thinking that the McCanns were guilty. Yes, I was one of the few people who were just sure that they did something to the child. Why? Because like the documentary tries to show, is that the media has been spreading a lot of false rumors, a lot of baseless accusations. For example, I've always thought that the DNA that they found in the car matched Madeleine like close to 100%. Like there was no doubt that this blood belonged to Madeleine McCann. That's what I thought. And the cadaver dogs also came in and they sniffed out the possibility that there was a corpse somewhere or another inside the room that they were staying in, as well as inside the car that they rented. But here's the thing. It's possible that that car could have had a cadaver in it at some point. It was a rented car. And not only was the car rented, it was rented about 20 days after Madeleine McCann was already missing. That's when the family rent the car. So a lot of this information was left out by the media. After watching the documentary, I definitely feel like the McCanns might not be as involved as I thought they were, or maybe they're not involved at all. I think the thing that makes it so believable that the McCanns would probably have some involvement in Madeleine's disappearance is just the sheer fact that they're not really likable people. And you get the sense, especially from her father, that he's just like this mean stone cold man. Like, he's just not a likable person. And even the investigator talked about it, that the first time he met him, he didn't like him. Like, he's not a person that you gravitate towards and even try to like, because he just has this edge. And of course I understand having a certain kind of chip on your shoulder and edge because of the circumstances that you're going through and the fact that your child is missing and you don't know where they are and you really want them to be found. I understand all of that, but we've seen missing children's parents in the news all the time, and they don't always come off like that. And that was that cold edge that really put a bad light onto the McCann family, and it's really the driving force of why when the Portuguese police came up with the theory that they were involved, a lot of people just ran with it, because why wouldn't they be involved when they seem so cold and distant? Maybe they were the same way with their children, even though we've seen them with their other two children and they seem to be loving, caring parents. But outside of that, we don't know if these people are just putting on a show for the public. I think this documentary is a pretty good watch and it's very interesting. What I really wish the documentary have done is to give a more updated projection of what Madeleine possibly looked like right now, because at this time she would be 15, about to turn 16. We would need more of an idea of what she would possibly look like right now, seeing that it's been 12 years, it's been 11 to 12 years since she's disappeared. She's no longer the 3-year-old child who went missing. They gave us an age progression picture at the end of the film. However, I feel like that one was more around the time when she would possibly between the ages of 9 and 11, and that doesn't really help later on because features change. And I know we could look at her mom and say she'd possibly look like that because as the artist who was doing the age progression said, she has her mom's features and she very much looked like her mom. It's been 12 years and I could just imagine how long those 12 years have felt to her parents and the rest of her family, and to think that her little brother and sister were 2 when she went missing and now they're probably 14. I've been watching this case since it happened, and only thing we've heard is just really theories about who possibly had an involvement in the case and who didn't have an involvement in the case, and it's like no actual real leads to it, just a bunch of times when you're like, oh, maybe this could be something, but it always comes back to being nothing. And all we can do is just hope and pray that this little girl, as well as all the other kids that are being abducted and sold into whatever kind of sick organization that's taking these children away from their family, all we can do is just hope and pray that they are somehow able to get back home to their family safe. I don't have a lot of subscribers here on YouTube, but I would ask you to please look at these pictures of Madeleine McCann, and if you see anyone that you think could possibly be her that fits in the timeline that's around the ages between 15, 16 or so on, who could possibly be her, please keep a lookout and alert the authorities. Once again, thank you for watching. Have a great day.